Go.
The Great Gatsby movie alters characters and scenes in such a way that affects the presentation of the theme of the book. That theme is that the poor or low class lose while the rich or high class win.
First off, Tobey Maguire's narrative abilities are astonishingly lacking and makes one too many lines of narration sound bad, detracting from their meaning.
As for altered scenes and characters, one example of this is the scene where Allies is drunk in the library and rambling about how the books are real. This scene further displays Gatsby's wealth, but it also introduces Allies, an odd character that we know very little about who comes back later for the funeral. What we get for this scene in the movie is a scene that detracts from Jordan's character. Instead of Allies, we get a creepy old man in a cramped, dark library instead of the large, opulent one from the book, who then says lines from a later scene about how no one knows anything about Gatsby. In the book, Jordan says these lines, characterizing her as a woman who does in fact know something, contrasting her with Daisy, who wishes to be a fool. 2.
Furthermore, the movie cuts out nearly entirely the relationship that develops between Jordan and Nick, which further adds to the theme that these incursions into the upper-class society by people like Nick are fleeting and will never lead to anything. As the relationship is brief, at the end they will leave off on a rather bad note, but again, this is not in the movie.
It also cuts out the whole section about Wilson in his garage after his wife's death. The movie has no problem completely cutting away from Nick to show us Gatsby's death or his backstory, but it can't cut to Wilson with his neighbor for some reason.
Wilson is a very important character, contrasting Tom in many ways, furthered by a comment from Nick that the two are very similar. Tom has all the success, and Wilson has none of it, and his wife's death is the last straw. But in Wilson's revenge, as with everything else, Tom wins and Gatsby loses. The poor man is forgotten and is never able to achieve his dreams. The movie could have brought this out a lot more, but it didn't.
The movie also cuts out Gatsby's dad, something which is quite important to Gatsby's character, and we learn a lot about him from it. Its absence in the movie is not ideal. The movie also completely cuts out Gatsby's funeral. Gatsby is just sort of in a coffin, and Nick falls asleep on the stairs for some reason.
In the book, this is an incredibly important part. In the book, Nick, Gatsby's dad, and Allies are the only people who show up to the funeral. Nick is no incredible friend of Gatsby's, nor is he a rich man. His father is not rich either and has been disconnected from his son for many years. And Allies is sort of a weird nobody. Gatsby, born low class, is at his funeral surrounded by lower class people, once again emphasizing the theme that the low class lose and the high class win, and that the low class will never really be high class. But, yet again, this is not in the book.
In the end, the movie is not a very good adaptation because it cut and changed too much of the content from the book, changing the perception of characters, events, and ultimately the theme of the story.